Welcome everybody to the April 2023 edition of Streets for All Happy Hour. We're so excited to have Councilmember Yaroslavsky here with us and also new Metro Board Member Yaroslavsky. Before we get to our conversation with the Councilmember, we're going to give you an update on our state efforts, go over our new campaign in Westwood, which of course is all in CD5, give you a few election results, a few wins and fails, and we'll get to our conversation with Katy. Our icebreaker this time is what's the change you're most hopeful for in CD5? I'm going to turn it over to Mark to give us a state update and answer that question. Mark.
Hey everyone, Mark Fuchsovich here. I think the thing I'm most excited for, I always think there's work to be done in and around the UCLA area, including a potential metro stop in the future. And so that's what I'm most excited for. But yeah, I want to give a state legislation update. Next slide, please. This year, Streets for All is sponsoring, which in other words, we essentially kind of co-wrote or wrote 11 bills this year in the state legislature. You can find all of them on our website, which I'll talk about in a second. My favorite is a challenging bill, which is going to be unbundling the cost of parking from the cost of rent. And so that's AB 1317 from Councilmember Correa, who's another LA member. Next slide. You can check out all of our bills. We have several with Senator Portantino, one with Senator Friedman. Next slide. But you can really check out all of our bills and learn more about them with the fact sheets, the actual text of our bill on streetsforall.org/2023-state-bills. Best place to check out our bills. It's a beautiful webpage we worked really hard on. And you can actually learn more about these bills in detail if you have any more questions or you even want to get involved in the state legislative work. Next slide. All of the bills that have been heard so far have passed their first policy committee. So you can see that we are here in terms of the star right there. And we still have a few more bills that have to go to their first policy committee. Next slide. And yeah, and I guess this is the last thing I'll end with is just we have a little video here of our trip to Sacramento. So enjoy that. Hey everyone, my name is Mark Fuchsovich. I'm the co-director of state policy for Streets for All. We're a transportation justice organization that's promoting mobility and climate change legislation. This year we have 11 sponsored bills in the California state legislature that have to do with climate change or racial justice or decriminalization or even making housing cheaper if you don't own a car. Check them out. California legislature is a deliberative legislative body made up of two chambers, similar to the House of Representatives and the Senate, trying to basically make their case in the legislature for the bills that they want. And that's what we're doing right here. And let's go check out the Transportation Committee. Let's go.
And with me today, Streets for All, you're making a lot of appearances. I've got Bubba Fish with me.
I'm Bubba Fish, co-director of state policy for Streets for All. The proud sponsors of AB 825, the Right to Ride bill, authored by Assemblyman Isaac Bryan. Criminalizing cyclists who ride on the sidewalk for their own safety rather than a street with no bike lanes leads to unneeded and biased interactions with law enforcement.
AB 413 requires daylighting at crosswalks. It's a small tweak that saves countless lives. We need to do everything we can to protect vulnerable road users. We ask for your support on this life-saving bill. I just finished up testifying on a few bills for Streets for All. It's a rainy day in Sacramento. But yeah, had a blast and all our bills passed.
Thank you, Mark. Over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Michael. The project I'm most excited for in CD5 is what I'm about to talk about, which is called Westwood Connected. This is a new coalition effort, if you go to the next slide, that we're working on. That's focused on building a better network of bike, bus, and pedestrian infrastructure around the larger UCLA area. It's focused around the Purple Line extension and a dedicated rail stop at UCLA for the Sepulveda line extension. It includes pedestrian improvements, protected bike lanes, and additional bus lanes on Wilshire. If you go to the next slide. This is a protected bike lane on Westwood. This would connect all the way to the Expo line. It creates a safe north-south bike connection and also has pedestrian improvements, like you can see a raised crossing here. If you go to the next slide. This is a protected cycle track and dedicated bus lane on Wilshire Boulevard. making what's currently a 9-lane road into something that's a lot comfier and easier to ride on for everyone. If you go to the next slide, this is Gailey, which is a highly trafficked street for students when they're walking. So it adds an all-way stop, corner hardening for turns, and then also a protected bike lane. You can see our coalition partners here at the bottom. And if you want to learn more or get involved, please visit westwoodconnected.com. I'm going to hand it over to Jenny, who's going to talk about some election results.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny, and the change I'm most hopeful for in CD5 is seeing more first last mile options along the purple line, particularly. So as many of you may recall, Neri Martinez, who was the LA City Council member for District 6 and also council president, she resigned after her racist comments were made public in a leaked recording last October. And this triggered a special election where several candidates filed to run. And back in January, Streets for All hosted a mobility debate that you can check out on our YouTube page. And we also sent an endorsement questionnaire to all the different candidates. And from those responses that we received, we chose to endorse Marco Santana and Antoinette Scully, pictured here. Next slide, please. So in this election, if no candidate receives a majority, there will be a runoff between the top 2 vote getters, where the next election will be on June 27th. Just what LA needs, right? Another election. So voter turnout was extremely low for even for LA. The mail-in ballots are still being counted, so these results could change, but here are the numbers as of yesterday, late afternoon. So Imelda Padilla is in the lead by 26%, but the race for second place and the spot in the runoff that would compete with Imelda, it's somewhat close between Marissa Alcaraz, and who has 21%, and Marco Santana with 19%. So we'll keep an eye out for the final results and keep you posted. So moving on to the neighborhood council elections. Region 11 just wrapped up. Here's a list of some of the winners that we endorsed. We have 3 folks in Mar Vista, 1 in Del Rey, 3 in Palms, including our own Katrina Kaiser. And we have 2 in West Los Angeles, Sawtell. So congrats to all of them. We're looking forward to having more allies on the neighborhood councils. Region 12 had their election day on April 1st, so the results for that should be coming in soon. And next, I'm going to pass it to Katrina with the wins and fails of the month.
Thanks, Jenny. Hi, everyone. I'm Katrina, and I'm also a CD5 resident living in Palms, as you just saw. And the change I'm most excited about in CD5, one of which I'm about to talk about, it's the Venice Blvd project, but in the big picture, I'm excited for CD5 to become a more welcoming district for people across income levels, all types of workers, all types of students, and I'm looking forward to an era of change in general. But the first win of the month I'm here to talk about is some Santa Monica safety improvements. We recently had an email campaign asking several of you all to make public comment at Santa Monica City Council in favor of banning right turn on red at the city level, as well as LPIs, leading pedestrian intervals. And this was a pretty successful meeting. It's going back to committee and will return later to the Santa Monica City Council with the report back. So stay tuned on that. Next, I'd love to talk a little bit more about Venice Blvd for All. It's almost here. For those of you who live in the area, the progress is happening very, very quickly as far as the restriping goes. Quick reminder for the group, we are going from parking 3 car lanes and unprotected bike lane on either side to parking a buffered protected bike lane and a bus lane and 2 car lanes on either side. It's a big, exciting change that's going to make Venice Blvd hopefully a lot safer, more inclusive for all types of road users. And I got the opportunity to speak to several neighbors in the community, volunteers from the Streets for All community, to talk about why they're excited.
I'm really excited about the new bike and bus lanes because as a bicycle commuter, I really want to prioritize my safety, and I'm looking forward to a safer commute.
We do not ever ride with these little guys on Venice due to the low comfort, lack of safety generally, and this is a really huge improvement for us.
I'm just excited to not die. There's a bunch of places that I just didn't go to before because it was just too dangerous. So really excited to explore.
It's great to have a new space to take friends and go to Culver, to Mar Vista, and maybe even to the beach and have everyone feel safe and comfortable.
So you'll see that soon. Over to Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Katrina. Super exciting. Really looking forward to checking that out in person myself. So we do have a fail. So as you can see in the picture on the left, the current state of the Beverly Canyon Lomitas intersection is pretty wild. As you could imagine, over the years, it's been a problem, you know, and it's something that it's finally got studied in 2021 when the city hired an engineering firm to evaluate it and identify alternatives. They provided three. The Traffic and Parking Commission in Beverly Hills unanimously passed a motion to recommend the city council to pursue the roundabout that you see on the right. A number of you responded to our call to action, so thank you there. You know, we thought it was pretty much a no-brainer. You know, it's a confusing right-of-way for drivers. It was designed over 100 years ago. There have been many collisions and many more near misses. There are few and or no in some spots pedestrian affordances at all. No ramps for accessibility. Just a lot of things that are clear opportunities to improve on. Unfortunately, it got rejected due to cost. You know, we were hoping this could get through. Also not bike friendly at all. Thanks, Kareem. Yeah. And so we were looking forward to this one. Thanks for like just speaking out. You know, I guess this is just one nice thing that Beverly Hills won't have. And hopefully other communities can, when they have similar problems, can go for roundabouts. Roundabouts are super cool. Over to Michael to talk about Ballona Creek.
Thanks, Kyle. You know, I've chaired the Mid-City West Transportation Committee, Neighborhood Council Transportation Committee for 4 years and have basically heard no from CD5 for everything we asked for. So I'm just excited to have an office that we could potentially work with and get some great stuff done. So that's what I'm hoping for. Quick update on our effort to extend the Ballona Creek bike path. Just a reminder, this bike path extension would go down the creek from Sin Kronenthal Park in Culver City to Venice and Cochrane. This time last month, we said we expected financial support from CD10, Culver City, Supervisor Mitchell, and the Baldwin Hills Conservancy. And I'm very happy to report we are fully funded. As of last Friday, the supervisor committed $20K. The Baldwin Hills Conservancy unanimously passed our funding request for $150. Culver City passed for $100K about 6 weeks ago, and CD10 is in for $150. So we're now just waiting for the levers of bureaucracy to move to actually get us the money, and we're going to start the feasibility study and have it done this year. One more win. This time last month, we were very concerned about the future of outdoor dining in Los Angeles, and we asked many of you to rally and push back on the draft ordinance. And I'm so happy to report that a couple days ago, city planning released a revised draft ordinance that essentially gave us almost everything we wanted. So this is so much better. It's probably going to preserve alfresco outdoor dining in Los Angeles, and we're very happy to see that. For our last winner fail of the month, I'm going to turn it over to Bubba.
Thanks, Michael. I think my favorite project that I'm excited about in CD5 would be the North Vale Gap. I don't know if anyone said that yet, but the gap between the Westwood station and the Palm station on the Expo bike path that I've come close to to getting hit on. So hopefully that does open on time. But yeah, Move Culver City is obviously a model project in the region. I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar, but for those who aren't, it was opened in 2021. It was the first really complete street in the region with a bike lane, a protected bike lane, and a bus lane, or the first transformation from a street with no bike facilities and no bus facilities to a fully protected bike lane and bus lane. It serves the one bus, the Big Blue Bus, LA DOT Commuter Express, and emergency vehicles. And we have a council now that was elected in 2022 that is basically released a survey to residents of Culver City, only those who can afford to live in Culver City, where the average median income is over 100K, and said, hey, what do you think about this project? Do you think it's making traffic worse? And of course, folks who are used to driving around their cars were like, yeah, I think it is. I think it's making traffic worse. But we actually have an opportunity here to expand the project to support it. And that's what we're here to do. So if you go to the next slide, we recently submitted to council a letter from over 28 organizations working for a better Culver City and beyond, urging them to not take away the protected bike lane or the bus lane in favor of an additional traffic lane, because that's what some of our council members are talking about potentially doing. That decision is going to be made in 2 weeks from Monday, so on April 24th. And we have had 2 already very successful demonstrations where we've had over 50 cyclists come out and ride with us to Culver City Council to urge the council not to take away this lifeline for transit users and cyclists along this corridor. So please come to our next meeting, Monday, April 24th at 7 p.m. We would love to have you, and please support this project so that we can continue to get more projects just like this all around SoCal. And I'll turn it to Michael to talk about our fundraiser.
Thank you, Bubba. A couple last things. We have 2 upcoming events. We do have a fundraiser this weekend, this Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. We're so grateful to our host committee. If you can come, please do. If you can't afford a ticket and still want to come, we will work with you. And you can see the details at streetsforall.org/RSVP. We also have an upcoming volunteer meetup on April 25th, and stay tuned for details on that. I want to plug our new merch partnership with Cleverhood one more time. They make these amazing capes that keep you dry, even if you bike in the rain, and we've had a lot of it this winter. You get 15% off for being part of our community, and they give us 20% of the sale to go to support our work, streetsforall.org/Cleverhood. And just a quick preview, next month, we're excited to have Councilmember Hernandez on, and that will be May 10th at 5 p.m. So I'm so excited to welcome Katy Yaroslavsky. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Katy Yaroslavsky serves as the councilwoman for LA's 5th council district, representing neighborhoods and communities she has been part of nearly her entire life. She was elected last year, and she currently serves as chair of the city's City Council's Energy and Environment Committee, vice chair of the Ad Hoc Olympics Committee, and is a member of the Budget and Finance Committee, Planning and Land Use, and Transportation. Prior to her election, she served as senior policy advisor to LA County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, where she created LA County's first Office of Sustainability, led the development, negotiation, and adoption by voters of Measure W. She helped create the Clean Power Alliance and previously served as general counsel to the Climate Action Reserve, a leading environmental nonprofit focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Katy, thank you so much for being here. And I am going to turn it over to Jenny for our first question for you.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Can you take that, Michael? My computer's acting up.
No problem. This is the first question. CD5 has suffered from years of neglect under the previous council member from an active transportation point of view. In fact, in 13 years, less than 2 miles of protected bike lanes were installed in CD5. We've advocated for bike infrastructure on Venice, Westwood, filling the gaps on Wilshire and San Vicente, among others. We wanted to know what your priorities are in the district to make sure people can safely move around on a bicycle without fearing for their lives.
Thanks for the question. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'm thrilled to be in this new position, and I'm really looking forward to working towards a bunch of our shared priorities. And I think I'll answer that question. I mean, there's a ton of stuff we want to do, and some of you know my deputy chief of staff on the policy side, Kristen Torres Pauling, who's also going to be staffing me on Metro. Jarrett Thompson is my transportation deputy. I don't think he's on. He had a conflict. I think he's on a bike ride actually tonight in Culver City, maybe. So look, we need a protected, connected bike network. We have an incredible opportunity with the arrival of Metro, 5 stations in Council District 5 plus 2 right outside of it in Beverly Hills, around first mile, last mile. I just was appointed to Metro, so I'm really looking forward to focusing on first mile, last mile as part of that role and making sure we're bringing resources to the 5th to really effectuate that. I had 3 budget asks when we met with the mayor's team to talk about the 23-24 budget. And one of those 3 was funding to build the Westwood protected bike lane. So the other 2, so was money for homeless housing and money to enter into a deal with LAUSD to make one of the schools in Palms available as a park on the weekends and after school hours. So those were our 3 asks in total for this next budget cycle, understanding that there's an expected contraction fiscally for the city. So, we're trying to put our money where our mouth is. And, there's a lot to talk about in terms of funding and how we can work together to make sure we can accelerate a lot of this work, because it's not acceptable to me or my team that we're just doing, 1 a year. And I was actually amazed to find out that the active transportation program at the city of LA doesn't actually have a budget. All of their funding comes from proactively going out and getting grants. So really want to think with you through how we can accelerate some of this work by partnering together on bringing some of that money to the district.
Thank you. I think I have the next question. So in 2021, Monique Munoz was killed by a 17-year-old driving a Lamborghini over 100 miles per hour on Olympic Blvd. Last month, you participated in an event with LADOT at the corner of Olympic and Overland where the crash happened, with a sign that asked drivers to, quote, watch their speed. Obviously, the crash and the planning for that sign happened well before you took office. But the optics of LADOT putting up a sign instead of suggesting a redesign of the street to make these crashes less likely were not unnoticed by the advocacy community. Additionally, I don't know if you saw this, but a car nearly crashed into a house on that same corner under the sign within days of it being placed. So wanted to get your thoughts on the situation. Do you have any ideas on how we can physically change Olympic, which is currently designed like a racetrack?
Yeah.
Can we narrow vehicle traffic lanes? Can we add bike and bus lanes, which would slow cars down and make the street more multimodal?
Yeah, so I probably shouldn't admit this because this is kind of embarrassing to admit. There were 2 signs, and I actually didn't see that sign up above because it was pretty high up saying slow down. There was the sign below that was like a memorial with her picture on it. And I honestly thought that's what we were pointing at. And it wasn't until I saw on Twitter everyone going nuts about the slow down sign where I was like, oh, that's really bad. I probably wouldn't have been in that picture if that's what we were pointing at. But to the real question of what can we do with Olympic? So I live just off of Olympic in Mid-City. And we live across on the south side of Olympic, and there's a park on the north side. And I won't even cross at the intersection with my kids. It's the La Cienega Olympic intersection because it's like terrifying. So we walk 2 blocks further east before we cross over. So yes, it's a freeway. And yes, I think whatever we can do to slow down traffic on these huge 6, 7 lane, 8 lanes, 9 lanes in the case of Wilshire, because cars are either going 70 or 60 or they're going 15. And it's insane. So yeah, I want us to put protected bike lanes everywhere we can that makes sense, particularly if it means that we're making some of these basically freeways cutting through our neighborhood safer. And yeah, whether it's speed humps or bump outs or whatever, all of that, understanding that all of that is going to cost money and take time, but really looking at, where are the death traps and starting there. Yeah.
Okay. Over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Michael. So I'm going to talk about Westwood Connected again. As you know, we've been working with UCLA Undergrad Student Association, the North Westwood Neighborhood Council, the Westwood BID, and other UCLA organizations on a set of holistic improvements to Westwood and the surrounding areas. This includes protected bike lanes on Westwood Boulevard from campus to the Expo Line station, filling in the bus lane gaps on Wilshire Boulevard through Condo Canyon, and a set of pedestrian and cyclist safety improvements on site of the Westwood Village. We'd love to get your feedback on this plan as a whole, if you plan on implementing some of it or all of it, or just what you're thinking.
Yeah, so when I was just looking at the website this afternoon, but I don't have it up in front of me. Look, as a general matter, my approach to this is how do we make our streets safer for everybody, and sort of de-emphasize making everything about getting places quickly in a car. So that's the lens through which me and my team are looking at this. And yeah, I mean, yes, we want to as soon as we can get funding for these things and do, whatever we're required to do in terms of outreach, we want to move forward with it. As I said, the Westwood bike lane, we've asked for funding to get that started now. All of this, as you all know, is expensive. We got a quote that the Westwood bike lane piece is about $5 million just for a very small portion of it, to get it into the village from, I don't want to misspeak, but maybe Olympic. So yes, the only thing where I want to get more data and better understand is the and I'm not saying no, it's just is the bus lane on Wilshire to fill in the gaps. And but yeah, I think these gaps in our infrastructure are really problematic, because then people point to the system and say, well, no one's using it. It's like, well, if you actually had it connect, then people could use it safely. So yeah, we should set up a follow-up meeting just to talk through all the details and how we're going to come up with the funding to implement it. But it gets that first mile, last mile, and eventually there's going to be a station there. And in the meantime, hundreds of thousands of people go in and out of Westwood every day. So
thank you.
Thanks. Jenny, over to you.
So as you know, Uplift Melrose was killed by Paul Koretz in 2021 after a wide coalition rallied behind the Bureau of Street Services for the city to apply for a 40 million grant to improve 1.6 miles of Melrose. And you stated in the campaign that you would support bringing the project back and getting it done. And I wanted to get an update from you on the project status, especially since I used to live in the area and helped a little bit while I was on the neighborhood council. So we want to know that and how you plan on moving it forward.
Yeah, I think I don't. In terms of updates, I'd have to talk to my transportation person and see where we are. I mean, it sounds like the grant hadn't been applied for. I've had conversations with folks on the California Transportation Commission about the availability of funds, and it's certainly something that we're very much still interested in doing. Again, it gets back to just capacity, and so we should talk. I mean, we meet periodically to talk about what are the priorities, and I think just making sure we're clear about what our priorities are, and then moving through those priorities and updating it as we check things off the list. But absolutely, it's still something we're very much interested in and committed to doing.
I've got the
as long as I have you all here, I'm also looking for a part-time transportation or metro deputy. So putting it out there.
Good group to do that with.
Yeah, I can't believe it didn't occur to me until just now. So
Katrina, over to you.
Thanks, Michael. So my question is not only about Venice Boulevard, but about bus lanes sort of writ large in the district. There's often oppositions to bus lanes in Los Angeles, especially through communities where few ride the bus. For example, the incoming bus lanes on Venice Boulevard have been watered down at the intersection of Robertson and Venice, although I know that there's community meetings about that tonight, as well as under the 405 and onwards through Mar Vista. How do you expect to counter these concerns when they come up when talking to some constituents and actually implement contiguous bus lanes, not only on Venice, but also on Wilshire, which we talked about, Sepulveda, La Brea, and other future corridors in the district?
Look, this is something that came up a lot in the campaign, and it's interesting. Often it was brought up as the way you brought it up as sort of a theoretical, how do you address it when you get this opposition? And often the people who are opposed to bus only lanes don't ever take the bus, and they don't ride a bike, and they're car dependent. And so I have lots of conversations with people about how just because you're not going to use it doesn't mean it won't get used. And having folks like you all show up in those spaces too, to push back. So it's not just one set of perspectives that are being heard at these community meetings. I know you all are very well organized. I'm sure some people are going to be at this meeting tonight. It's really important. And also, making sure that we're showing, like if it fits my schedule, I should show up at the Culver City Council meeting and talk about why they should keep that infrastructure through Culver City, and that we're doing our part in the city of LA, and that these are regional issues that require regional collaboration. So, I think showing up really matters, and then just not backing down. I mean, I was very clear on my position around mass transit and active transit when I was running. And so people knew where I was on these issues. And I was looking at the participants on this call. I know many of you through the campaign. And so, I think I didn't hide the ball about where I was on these issues. And so I think following through and actually voting and legislating in the ways that I said I would it shouldn't come as a surprise.
That's very exciting to hear you come out in favor of the move Culver City infrastructure, as a next door neighbor to it.
Well, I think it's important for them to hear from me, and I don't know if my colleague Tracy Park would show up too, but I think it's powerful when we remind each other that we're part of a greater fabric, and regional issues like transportation or homelessness, or basically anything that seems intractable and hard, requires us to be constantly holding each other accountable in a respectful but persistent way.
Thanks so
Katy,
much. Over to Josh.
Before we go to the next question, there's a question on if somebody is interested in that role that you mentioned. Oh, never mind. I see Leo just answered it.
Yeah, Leo's on.
Who to contact. Okay. Over to Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So forgot to mention my icebreaker, what I'm looking forward to in CD5, and it happens to be this question. So the Sepulveda Transit Corridor has the potential to reshape the entire city in ways few transit lines are able to. When we look at cities across the United States, potentially closing the loop, both figuratively and literally, on our transit goals. When looking at ridership projections, compatibility with our existing system, total travel time, and UCLA's specific needs, heavy rail is the obvious choice, right? Right now, Metro is doing 2 EIRs, one for heavy rail and the other for monorail. And obviously, we're big fans of heavy rail that has the UCLA stop. Now that you have a seat on the board, what can you tell us about your stance on the project? When do you expect to publicly take a stand on an option?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I'm still waiting to see what the EIR process reveals. I've said publicly I'm committed to whatever option is chosen needs to connect seamlessly with the system overall. It needs to be efficient. It needs to get people where they need to go. It needs to have a station at UCLA. And the interesting, I serve at the pleasure of the mayor. And so it will be, once I sort of figure out where I am on this, it'll be having a conversation with the mayor and her team about what's best for not only the district, but for the system more broadly. And so, I think, once the EIR is out and final, it'll be easier for me to weigh in and know exactly what the impacts are. And, we're having conversations. There are a bunch of conversations happening about, what the actual route might be, whether that's exactly where it's going to go under Stone Canyon, or if it's going to go someplace else. And or whether it's going to be a tram. So stay tuned.
Katie, before we go to audience questions, I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to answer the icebreaker. Is there any transportation project you're most excited about in the district that you'd like to see happen?
I'm really excited about the Purple Line stations opening and being able to get there safely and easily. I live, near Olympic and La Cienega, and so that's half a mile basically from the new station coming in. And I'm super excited to figure out how to bring resources to the district so that we can get people there safely and pleasantly. And there's just, we talked about Olympic, we talked about Wilshire, La Cienega is another one. There are a lot of problematic streets, which if approached from the right outlook, I think really present themselves as opportunities, right? Because they're so wide and they're so unsafe. So I would say the Purple Line actually opening and figuring out how to make it easy for people to get there.
Great, let's go to some audience questions. So the first one is from Stephen Stanton. Hi, Katie. I just recently won a seat on the Palms Neighborhood Council. What are some ways our NC can facilitate progress on outstanding neighborhood projects pending approval or funding at the city level? For example, would letters or emails of support from impacted residents and businesses help?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I was talking to my team about this today, the biggest challenge right now at the city, it's twofold. It's money and it's staffing. And so to the extent we can be partnering together to identify pots of money that, we can have our team working on, or that we could work on together around grant applications, really coming up with priorities together for our neighborhoods, but also for the district more broadly. And then just figuring out how to fund them together, because I do think that when communities are on board and I can point to it and say, okay, this is a no-brainer, and the community, there's a lot of support for it, it makes it easier to move it up the list. And I want to be able to do that everywhere.
Next question. As a Metro board member, you voted to extend the police contract. What kind of rider feedback have you been getting that led you to this conclusion? And what are you looking forward to doing to promote the ambassador program? And I guess more broadly, how do you see those two working together?
Yeah, so I think, public safety on Metro right now is a real challenge, and ridership is still down, and a lot of people who can afford to not take Metro are choosing not to take it because they don't feel safe. And so I think we need to figure out how to make Metro safe. And some of that is going to be police officers, because I don't think it was a question of do we extend the contracts at all or just terminate the contracts. And it was important that the city of Los Angeles, to the city of Los Angeles, that we have people down there, and that includes the ambassador program. I think that there needs to be some refinements to the ambassador program to really make sure that they're engaging with people. When I took the Metro to my first meeting, and there were more security people down there than there were riders. We went down the stairs, and there was a gaggle of LAPD officers at this entrance to the station. And then we went down further, and it was like 5 or 6 ambassadors just talking to each other, not really engaging with the people around them. And so I think some additional training is probably important. Having social workers down there is really important. We need to be connecting people who are unhoused to housing and services. I think Assemblywoman Friedman introduced some legislation this past week that would require LASA and the homeless service providers to actually go down into our transit system and engage and provide those services, trying to connect people to housing, to services. So I think we need more of that as well, particularly that, because that seems to be the biggest challenge right now is that riders who are riding to and from work or taking trips on Metro have dwindled to the point where they're almost non-existent, and it's really only the people who can't afford to take a different option.
One more Metro question here regarding housing. How do you think you can accomplish building denser housing on or near Metro-owned property in CD5, despite a multitude of traditional single-family homes along much of the Expo Lines route, for example, in Rancho Park?
Yeah, so when I talked to Mayor Bass about my interest in serving on Metro, this was one of the big things we talked about. And, she and I agree that there isn't enough housing at price points most people can afford on the West Side, and that the arrival of Metro offers a real opportunity for us to try and fix that. So I'm really excited about how we can put more housing near those Metro stations, and near our job centers in Council District 5, which just so happen 2 out of 3 of those, UCLA and Century City, are going to be having Metro stations pretty soon, hopefully. So yeah, I want to put a ton of homeless housing, affordable housing, and workforce housing at and adjacent to our Metro stations, with services and making it easy for people to get there and then stay there. So
how do you deal with residents that are used to their area being single family only? How do you?
Well, there's no more single family in California, right? So, some neighborhoods I think are more amenable to it than others. We've seen that SB9 the uptake on SB9, at least in Council District 5, has been minimal. There's like a lot of the neighborhoods in 5 are HPOZs, which makes it hard to do anything other than what's already there. And so, I think we can be strategic about where we add that density. And, a lot of the state legislation has already allowed for that housing to go in. I mean, there's projects proposed all over CD5 using state density bonuses and transit-oriented communities. And so that housing is going in. My concern is that there's not enough of it at the affordable and workforce levels, or certainly homeless housing.
Question about Metro Bike Share. Brian says, is there any plan to increase coverage for Metro Bike Share in the area? I live about 1 mile from the Westwood Rancho Park station, but there are no stations near me that I can use.
We'll look into that. I would like to say yes. I think that we need more of that. So we'll look into it and circle back.
Question from Thomas Gonzalez. A CD4 staffer recently told my neighborhood council transportation committee that LADOT is severely understaffed due to a lot of retirements with COVID and serious challenges with hiring. Are you concerned about this issue? Is there anything you are doing or have done to address this challenge?
Yeah, so vacancies across the city are abysmal. It's a plan. All the departments are affected by this, every single one of them, except apparently the Office of Cannabis, because they are self-funding and so they are full capacity. So yeah, it's a real problem. And I wanted to be on the personnel committee that is hopefully going to fix this, but I'm not. But I know that this is a priority for a bunch of my colleagues who are, and for the mayor, that it's just unacceptable that we've got departments. Some departments are at 50% vacancy. I mean, how do you run a city? I mean, the way I describe it is every Thursday when my trash gets picked up, I'm jubilant because it's like, well, at least something's working. It just feels like so much is not working right now at the city, and things are going so slowly because of those vacancies. And so it's not just the city of LA. I mean, private sector employers in California and across the country, actually, municipalities are having a really hard time hiring and retaining people. And some of that's the cost of living. Some of it's just people are able to work remotely and don't want to live here. So I'm interested in if there's a way for us to figure out, can we build some municipal employee housing and offer that as part of luring people to come work at the city. So we're looking into it.
I'll just say, as a fine point on that, one of the challenges, or one of the frustrations, I should say, we have is that Streets for All and other groups worked like hell to get certain people elected that care about the stuff we care about. And they're asking DOT for all sorts of things from districts that DOT isn't used to being asked for things. And they just don't have the staff to deal with all the requests. So I think it's getting pretty acute.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, and the planning department's the same thing, it's community plan update process is woefully inadequate and well behind because they don't have planners. So yes, it's one of the most important things that we have to figure out at the city.
So I'm going to combine two questions I see. There's a question about the bike lanes on Santa Monica Boulevard that go from the Beverly Hills border to Sepulveda. And the question is, how could we protect these bike lanes and that there's ample space? And that's actually true. The bike lanes are 6 feet wide. They only need to be 5. And the travel lanes are 11 feet wide and even 12 feet wide, and they only need to be 10. So actually, without taking away anything from anybody, just with some funding, we could scrape up the paint. And this is actually the only thing I got Paul Koretz to say yes to, and then the funding never came. But what are your thoughts on that? It would require scraping up the thermoplastic paint, narrowing travel lanes a little bit, putting a buffer with some bollards, and you could have a probably 2-3 mile protected bike lane on Santa Monica.
Yeah, so you and I talked about this. I think it's a great idea. Santa Monica is under the auspices of Caltrans, so we should talk to them.
Not anymore.
Right? Isn't it a highway? Santa
Nope,
Monica?
it's relinquished.
Oh.
Yeah, it's City of LA.
Oh, well, then let's just find the money and do it. I mean, so much of this is just money, right? And I was talking to my chief of staff earlier today about, maybe it was today, I don't remember when it was, about trying to get like a fellow funded through some, foundation or something to help with some of this so that we can try and go after grants and bring money to our district. Because there's just so much work to do, and it's just a question of man or woman power, person power, to bring the resources so we can do the work. And like you say, it's LADOT being short-staffed. But yes, I would love to do that. I've ridden that bike lane, and it's a little bit terrifying, especially as you go down westbound towards Beverly Glen. That intersection's scary.
I agree. Thomas Price asks, are there any steps that the council can take to reduce the level of community engagement that's required today to move projects forward? My experience with these meetings / neighborhood councils suggests that the people with the most time on their hands to join these sessions are often the most opposed.
Yeah, we're going to look into that. I mean, first we need to see where the funding is going to come from and make sure we can find the funding. And it's sort of a little chicken and eggy. Do we move forward with the process until we know that we've got the funding, or we just start the process and hope the funding comes through? And I'm sort of the mind that we should start it and then figure out how to pay for it as we're making our way through, because it's going to take a while, not too long. But yeah, we don't, whatever the legally required meetings are to have, we'll have. And then I think it's just a question of having people show up at the meetings and speak in support, and then we move ahead and do it. So I'm not interested in spending 3, 4, 5 years on a lengthy process where we decide that we need a bike lane in a place where we all know now we need a bike lane.
Just to put a fine point on that, historically, it's been the council offices that tell DOT what outreach they want and how many rounds and all of that stuff. So there is some discretion, but I think it'd be great for the city to have a uniform policy, because there's some places like on the Adams project, DOT spent 5 years doing outreach to try to get a yes. And there's other projects that were a lot easier.
That just seems like an excuse for not making a hard decision. So not super interested in that.
This might be more of a state or federal issue, but there was a study that came out today talking about Americans' preference for SUVs and light trucks. They've overtaken cars now in all 50 states. And the question is, any discussion at the local level about taxing or banning these new monster-sized trucks where the driver can't even see children in front of them?
Not that I know of, but sounds like a good conversation to have. It seems like the sort of thing where you'd want the market to be big enough to be, you want to take this to California and right to Isaac.
Totally.
And Brian.
Next question from Scott Gruber. How do you feel about bringing in traffic cameras to help enforce speed limits to make our streets safer? And there's actually a bill that Laura Friedman is pushing. It's her third attempt, I believe, at legalizing speed cameras in California. Los Angeles would be a pilot city. There's opposition from the ACLU and a few others. There's also a lot of people asking for it. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, look, it's a little bit hard for the reasons that the ACLU talks about. But I also think we need to make our streets safer. And for me, that's the #1 priority. So if there's a way that we can do it while we're also sensitive to and minimize the concerns that are raised by the ACLU and others, I think we need to figure it out, because people are driving much faster, I think, than they were before COVID. And I'm trying to figure out red light cameras, and there's some lawsuit and settlement in the city of LA, so we're not allowed to do red light cameras. But I walk my kid across La Cienega to school, 5 days a week, and someone every single time invariably runs the red light, and it's been a close call a few times, and that happens all over the place every day. So
I think part of that intersection might be in the city of Beverly Hills, and I think they still do use red light.
They do. Oh, they have them everywhere.
So this question is about first mile, last mile planning at Metro, and I'm going to sort of segue it into a question specifically about San Vicente. But Metro often does these first mile, last mile plans that look great on paper, and then cities just completely ignore. The question is, what are some ways we can make these upgrades already on the plan a reality? And specifically, something that, well, there is first mile, last mile money though, because the city has to offset a certain percentage, and they have to either pay that to Metro in cash or do the work. And I'll just caveat this by saying that the Mid-City West Neighborhood Council yesterday passed a letter asking for you guys to initiate a traffic study on San Vicente in anticipation of the Purple Line, both at Fairfax and Wilshire and La Cienega and Wilshire. There's a 1 mile gap on San Vicente for the bike network, which would be a major first mile, last mile. So would love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, like I said, gaps need to be filled in. And, I think the way we do that, I think a traffic study would be helpful to show how we do that. San Vicente is super wide, and there's, I think, probably a safe way to do that minimizes whatever the impacts are to our neighbors on San Vicente. But yeah, it is a priority. I know the community, at least a couple people in the community, are saying wait until Wilshire opens back up, because they're getting a lot of cut through traffic now because of the construction on Wilshire. But we can do some studies now and look at it for sure. Again, it's just money. All of it's money.
Another question from Scott, this time about how do we not make sure we don't undo positive improvements? He's scared that Move Culver City may get torn out. And I guess I'll just put a little bit of a spin on the question. How do we do this in the right way with communities where we're not just letting the loudest minority voices in the room control the decision? At the same time, we're not jamming it down their throat, so whoever comes next after you reverses it, or the city has a backlash?
It's a great question. I mean, I think it's hard to get the balance right of moving quickly and moving intentionally on anything. I mean, look at Paris and what the mayor boldly did there, and how it's sort of retreating a little bit. And, there's no exact science to it. I think pushing hard, being respectful, trying to mitigate whatever legitimate concerns there are in the design, and also have a real process. It just doesn't have to be drawn out for multiple years. And then, there's a lot of vilification of the other side. And so I think to the extent we can take that down a notch, and some of the, not that you're doing it, but some of the anger, people don't like change. And so figuring out how to connect with them as people, I know this sounds kind of woo-woo, and bringing it down by bringing them in to the extent possible is always preferred. It's like you don't want to do things incrementally, because then nothing ever gets done. But when you do big change that feels fast to people, perhaps like what's happened in Culver City, people want to undo that. And, and this is why elections matter and have consequences. And I think, showing up and making a big deal out of it if I can go, I'll go. And, or at least send in a letter and call my colleagues on the Culver City Council, plead for them to keep it. I think just making sure they understand the context in which these decisions are made and who it impacts, and that we're all paying attention.
Sounds good. We're almost out of time. I wanted to give you a space if you wanted on just any last words, any of your goals in office, anything else you'd like to say.
I'm thrilled to be able to do this work. The committees that I'm on, I think to the extent it's going to be possible to get anything done, I feel like I've got the team and the committees to be able to do that. And, I'm going to fight like hell for the next 4 years and try and get as much of this done as possible. And, for me, this work intersects with housing justice work, with climate and sustainability work. And it feels almost impossible just given the structure and the bureaucracy of the city, right? We don't have one place where we talk about all of these things together. We have different committees where Plum talks about this piece, and transportation talks about this piece, and energy and environment talks about that piece. And so, but I'm heartened now that I've been there for almost 4 months at how much opportunity there is. And I'm really looking forward to undertaking this work with all of you, and, hope we can have conversations like this, but also working sessions where we talk about specifics in the neighborhood and organizing and how we make sure we get over the finish line on this stuff, so that we don't just talk about it, but that it actually happens.
Great. Well, that's time. Thank you so much for your time being here. We really do appreciate it. A lot of the community members on here supported you, voted for you, and are just excited to see change in the district. So we're happy to see you here.
Thank you. I'm really grateful and I'm thrilled. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you May 10th and maybe this weekend at the fundraiser. Have a good night. Bye.